This video lecture is meant to help you explore the different types of chemical reactions that we will be studying and that you should learn to recognize. The 5 basic categories are combustion, synthesis, decomposition, single replacement, and double replacement. We're going to start with combustion. That's this first arrow right here, this first group of chemical reactions. What we see here, one of the reactants is always a hydrocarbon. That's a compound that contains carbon and hydrogen, and sometimes some other things like oxygen, as we see here. But what you should notice here is that every single one of these reactions has oxygen as a reactant. Right? Combustion is effectively when something burns. Things cannot burn if they do not have oxygen, so you have to have oxygen as a reactant. Also, products of combustion will always be carbon dioxide and water, and only carbon dioxide and water. So you need to recognize that when you see those two products as the only products, that is another characteristic that'll help you recognize that this is combustion. Right, so we're going to cut that away. So what you're looking for in combustion is a hydrocarbon reacting with oxygen to form CO2 and H2O. All right, the second kind of chemical reaction that we're going to take a look at is synthesis. All right, synthesis right here. What do we notice about these 4 reactions? Well, sometimes oxygen's a reactant, but not always. But what you should possibly see if you step back and don't get too wrapped up in looking at the identity of the actual chemical formulas, you should notice that you have 2 reactants turning into 1 product. 2 reactants turning into 1 product. 2 reactants, 1 product. 2 reactants, 1 product. That is the hallmark of a synthesis reaction. Right? So 2 or more reactants turning into 1 product. That will be categorized as a synthesis reaction. All right, let's take a look at the next type of chemical reaction, and that is decomposition. All right, so now we are looking at this set of chemical equations, and you should notice it's sort of the opposite of synthesis. In this case, we are starting with 1 reactant, and it is decomposing or breaking apart into 2 products. 1 reactant, 2 products, 1 reactant, 2 products, 1 reactant, 2 products. Now sometimes you might see more than 1 product, in which case, as long as you're starting with 1 reactant, 2 or more products will give you what you should recognize that as a decomposition reaction. Okay, the third type of chemical reactions we're going to take a look at, or maybe it's the 4th one, single replacement. Single replacement, what you are looking for, again, you're not looking for specific chemicals, but you are looking for an element all by itself reacting with a compound, and what you notice is that the metals, or at least one of the elements, switches places. So the copper and the silver end up switching. So the element you started with, in this case copper, now ends up in a compound. And the silver that was originally in a compound is now all by itself. So you're looking for element and a compound turning into a compound and an element. That is the hallmark of a single replacement. Now you can also sometimes have nonmetals can also switch depending on what the chemical reaction is. The last type of chemical reactions that we're going to take a look at is double replacement. Double replacement is similar to single replacement, with the difference being that you're not going to have an element all by itself. You're going to start with 2 compounds. You're going to end up with 2 compounds. But what you might notice, let's see, this one might be a little more obvious. So down here, NaCl, H2SO4. The sodium, which was originally with the chlorine, and the hydrogen, originally with the sulfate, have traded places. So now we have the sodium and the sulfate coming together into the compound sodium sulfate, and the hydrogen and the chlorine come together to form hydrogen chloride. Okay, so again, what you're looking for is compound plus a compound turning into two different compounds where the cations and the anions switch places. Okay, so this concludes the video lecture for chemical reaction types, learning how to classify the different kinds of chemical reactions. Looking at a chemical reaction, can you tell what kind of reaction it is? That's it for me. We'll see you in the classroom.